Embark Live. You guys can see down here below, you can sign up at Embark Live, and the promo code is me. It's my name. So in case you guys didn't know, Shama is spelled with a Y, not an H. Make sure that I have all my audio stuff set up properly. Okay, so guys, today we're going to talk a little bit about putting stuff on sale. And I know that oftentimes sale is one of those things where, you know, it's hard to know when to put inventory on markdown. And a lot of brands right now have been putting a lot of stuff on markdown. And whoops, I think I just dropped my chair. I'm sorry. So a lot of brands have been putting a lot of stuff on markdown. And I think what's really interesting is when you look at kind of the trajectory of business, you know, the last few months have been really wild with COVID and with the outbreak. And gosh, last month in May, though, we actually found out that retail ended up seeing an uptick in sales, particularly due to e-commerce, which is great. So an uptick in sales from May over April, but we're also saw that it's, you know, it's something that hasn't quite caught up to LY, but we're starting to see some really positive trends happening. So as businesses are opening, New York City just launched into phase 2 of reopening. We're going to see some retail stuff kick in. We're also seeing that sales are just not quite as abundant as they were. So the beginning of COVID, a lot of brands went, oh my gosh, I got to mark everything on the house down. But now we're starting to see that actually you don't have to mark everything down. And also with the new concepts here of how we're looking at the fashion calendar. So the fashion calendar is really the notion of when do products get put on sale, and then also when do products, when do they get put on sale, how long, and when's the cycle of buying on the side of the buyer. So today, as we're talking about, you know, markdowns and how to manage and look at markdowns, you actually want to ask yourself, more so the question of how often am I releasing new products? What is the lifetime value of that product? Meaning, am I looking at a 6-month window, a 3-month window? How am I looking at drops, right? And what do drops look like? And so product drops, I think, are one of the very first important things to consider when you start to think about your cadence, right? Meaning, like, when do I put things on sale? Should come right in alignment with how often am I introducing new things. So if you don't know your merchandising strategy or how often you're introducing new things, chances are you're not going to be able to dictate, if it's new things, right? You're not going to be able to dictate kind of the notion of when to bring something on a 20% discount, a 30% discount, 50%, 75, 90, etc. Now, there are a couple of things that I want to educate you guys on. Number one is the notion of a POS, and the second is the notion of a markdown. POS means that the discount is taken at the point of sale. Oftentimes you see those things in terms of 4th of July weekends. You also see them in terms of, you know, other components like Memorial Weekend or Labor Day weekend. And so a POS really becomes a short form discount. It really becomes a short-term discount as we're thinking about the notion of how we are planning, you know, these kinds of markdowns, right? So the POS is simply something that ends up happening, you know, as we're looking at, the POS is something simply that happens as we're looking at short term versus longer term. So when we're actually looking at longer term discounts, you know, what I think is very interesting, those really comes down into the markdown components. So markdowns end up having us be, like when we think about markdown strategy, what we end up actually looking at is the markdown strategies on, you know, am I going to put this 25% off? How long has this product actually been, you know, on the shelf life of the business? And then at the end of the day, do I need to make that cadence something where, okay, now I have something that I've POS'd 2 or 3 times, right? Now that I've POS'd that product 2 or 3 times, now I'm actually going to be, you know, taking it from that POS to its first markdown. And then after I have it on its first markdown, then I might keep it on the first markdown, let's say for another month. And then from keeping it marked down from once, right, then I'm actually not going to have the opportunity to be able to mark it down, let's say 2 or 3 times. Matthew, I see you out there. You want me to go on IG Live, but I don't have access to log into the IG Live. So So I don't know how I can achieve that at this moment, but hopefully next time I can do it. But I don't have it. Let me see if I can try it 1 second, but I don't think I have access to the Makers Row IG Live. Let's see. All right. I don't think I have access. Okay. So given that, guys, I'm just going to keep carrying on about markdown strategies here. Okay. So when we look at the markdown component, what I think is most valuable here, most important, is we look at creating kind of a cadence here of markdowns. So that means that we're thinking about things like, product comes onto the site, you take 2 or 3 different POSs, you don't POS everything, you look at putting things on POS that are slow movers. So if you're like, hey, this dress hasn't been moving, it's been on the site for about 2 to 3 months, what do I actually do with that? Well, once you actually have it for 2 to 3 months, let's say on the site, then you mark down that specific color, right? Once you take that color and put it on a POS for the weekend, you then start to monitor, did that product sell through at 30% off? Did it sell through at 40% off? Like, how do I start to think about the POS and its efficacy? And then you go to the next POS, and all of a sudden you're looking at your merchandising and your product just in a more substantial way. And doing that, looking at your products in a more detailed capacity will, number one, prevent you from putting the whole business on sale, which looks like you're going out of your company, which you definitely don't want to do. And then it also actually allows you to take a step back and say, okay, if I put this on a markdown or on a POS, what's the sell-through? And do I actually need to consider at a certain point, what that sell-through looks like? And then how do we kind of take it from there? So what I'm really advocating here is a little bit more of brand consistency, right? I'm really wanting us to take a look at things like, how are each of your styles, colors, and SKUs performing, right? That I think is super, super important. And once you start to develop, I would say, that kind of analysis, right? Sell-through analysis, gross margin performance, you actually become a lot smarter at being able to manage markdowns. So let's think about now as we reinvent kind of the fashion calendar, or we're reinventing retail, if you will, as we look to reinvent retail, how do we start to think about the new ways of putting things on sale? Well, what's fascinating is traditionally swimsuits are being marked down in July. And guess what? Everyone's going swimming still, right? So as we look at reconfiguring our markdown cadence, we start to look at actual seasons. We look at what's working in the market. We're also a far more globalized industry, right? We are shipping products. We might be based in Canada, and we're shipping products to Australia. So when we think about how the performance of our product, it's also taking into consideration what is the actual weather where I am, and then also where else am I shipping, and what does my global distribution strategy look like? If I'm only shipping in the US, then I might be more sensitive to products. I might be more sensitive to the climate and certain high volume states. I remember when I was at Macy's, we rolled out this program called My Macy's. And what was so interesting about My Macy's is that we actually ended up, markdowns and doing regional allocations based on how things were performing on a store level by region. And that I think is fascinating. You can do a very similar thing on e-com. You can segment your email marketing list, and you can say, okay, I know it is like super, super hot on the East Coast right now, and I'm going to send out an email, segment my newsletter, send out an email to the East Coast people and say, hey, I'm going to give you 10% off of a swimsuit. I know it's really hot right now. And they're probably going to get that email and be like, dang, how did they know that was happening? I mean, most people know you can do email segmentation, but how often are we actually thinking about it, right? Not as often. We're just really happy that we have the product when we need it, right? So as we start to think about markdowns, I would say really think about email segmentation, think about your advertising strategy, think about regionality, think about what states are purchasing from you more, and can you do more regional advertising for certain products or working in certain regions. Now, if you're just launching your business and you got 100 customers, very difficult to do this kind of segmentation because you're not really looking at a lot of trends. You're just kind of still pushing your brand out there, which means you need to do more intuitive marketing. You actually need to be working with people. If you don't have the data to tell you, you need to be working with consultants, with agencies who can help you actually start to map out the ways in which you're going to be penetrating the market and the ways in which you're going to be getting that kind of information visibility. So what I think is fascinating is no matter what stage you're at, you should be looking at segmentation, or you should be looking at data acquisition so then you can segment. And I think that that's really important. The other thing when it comes to markdowns and POS is, back in 2008 when housing market collapsed and everything went and it was pretty insane, we saw a huge rise of the outlet business. And that meant that a lot of people were really focused on huge, heavy markdowns. And then we saw the rise of direct to consumer. Now, direct to consumer really came out of the fact that, people wanted to spend less money on products, still have great quality. There you go. DTC was born. Originally meant to have DTC with less markdowns, right? Because DTC, like brands like Everlane, for example, are built on the premise that you're paying less because there isn't a markup. However, companies like Everlane still need to put things on sale. So the margins that they're taking, at least on paper, appear to be less. However, little retail secret here. Just because someone says that it would normally sell for X price, they say it'll normally sell for this price, doesn't mean the value of the actual product that you're getting is commensurate of a value of the higher price point product. I'll give you an example. You go onto their website and it's like, yeah, you can buy this t-shirt for $15 and normally it would retail for $30. You have to ask yourself, well, what are the components that would have gone into that $30 product versus that $15 product? And is it that they took a cross-section of the market and said, well, on average, I guess you might spend this price. And so we're going to benchmark ourselves to that price, but not take the margin hit on the back. So keep in mind, guys, a lot of stuff as you're a brand, you can, not everything you say is 100% accurate all the time. And in this day and age with transparency and kind of this more call out culture, we do have to be very conscious of what it is that we're advertising and what it is that we're saying and how true that is. But when you put a perceived value on something, it's hard to know how someone would actually prove that, right? Unless you're a product developer and you understand how things are manufactured. Otherwise, very, very difficult. But what is interesting here is that Everlane actually went through this really cool process and they did something that was really first in the market that I hadn't seen anyone else do, which is pay what you want, which is like, here are some good price points you can pay at, and we need to move through these products. And so here are some, here are some options here on how to pay what you want. And I actually really appreciate that because I think it gives consumers the opportunity to choose what they want to pay. Being mindful that businesses need to make money, while also supporting the values that they believe in while purchasing from that company. So I thought that was a really cool way of working around the notion of sales and markdowns. But as we move, into the future of retail and how retail is shifting, I think what we'll likely end up finding is that, retail is shifting in a way that is going to be more consumer friendly. Doesn't mean it's going to be more business friendly, but it'll be more consumer friendly, meaning the right products at the right time with the right customer. And I learned that motto about, 15 years ago, right? The right product at the right time with the right customer. And when it comes to the way retail has traditionally operated, you end up buying the product, like the winter coat that's on sale in January when it's still freezing, right? Which doesn't make sense for the retailers, right? It's like, why would you mark that on sale? It's because they're getting ready for these new goods that are supposed to arrive. So what I think is a important moment, I think, for all of the brands out there that are listening today is it's very, very important to ask yourself, how often am I releasing new products? What is my brand value proposition, right? You want to go into producing products knowing that you likely will have to mark down or POS it, right? If you POS a product, there's nothing wrong with that. It means that you're giving people a discount. You want to sell through a color, you want to sell through some stuff, and you want to drum up some business. Nothing wrong with that. Markdowns, however, a little bit more severe, right? Something goes on markdown. Generally speaking, it's a final sale. And if it's a final sale, you're moving it out at a low price. You're not expecting any returns, right? Most final sales are non-returnable because they're getting it at a low price, which means the margins are quite low. So think about the business you want to build today. Think about the cadence of the product deliveries. Think about the cadence of product delivery, frequency of merchandise. Think about your margin planning. Really start to think about all these other components that I think ultimately, these other components that will ultimately help you decide when to put things on sale, for how long you want to put them on sale, and then help us then make the right decision as to, is it Labor Day weekend is the first time, or maybe we don't do any sales and we wait until end of year and do a big blowout sale because we're achieving a high sell-through. Now, the notion of sell-through and industry standards on sell-through has also varied dramatically in the last few years. Used to be, when we talked about sell-through, that we were actually thinking about things like, okay, in a 6-month full price selling cycle, we're looking at a, let's say, a 70% full price sell-through, right? And I think that is, and I think that's really valuable. Right? So when we think about things like what is the sell-through, I always tell people, start to really look at the components of like how long you're going to have it there, and then basically use that to then drive the sell-through. So if I have 100 units that I'm going to sell this month, and then next month I'm introducing another 100 units, well, I'm probably not going to have 100% sell-through, because unless it's like you have a huge volume of traffic or people on your newsletter and you actually know you're going to sell through it. I might say, given the state of my business, I might say, all right, I'm going to aim for a 70% sell through this month. So 70 units out of the 100. I'm going to get another 100 in. Maybe I'll, start sitting on the new styles that are coming in at this 100 unit volume, right? And then maybe once or twice a year or during key holidays, I might then look to strategically POS them. And that, I think, is a really smart approach. There is no one size fits all when it comes to this type of strategy. It's very important that you are working either yourself with who's an expert or who has experience in evaluating merchandising, gross margin planning, all of that, or you're working with someone who does. But these all have P&L implications, right? So profit and loss implications. Markdowns become a really important way of calculating the health of your business. It's not just your top line sales, but it's the actual value that you've sold. If I sold $100,000 on sale, it's different than selling $100,000 at full price. If I sell it on sale, that means that I have less margin, right? That means that $100,000 means less to me. If I'm selling $100,000 at full price, it means that means more to me. So these markdowns, while they can be helpful for drumming up top line revenue, right? Because you need to move through goods, they're not the most profitable, which is why people get so afraid about working with markdowns. However, customers want markdowns. You will find customers who will only shop when things are on sale. You'll find other customers who are willing to splurge on those full price items once in a while, and some who buy mostly full price because they know that those products have limited demand. But the notion, guys, of building a limited edition only business, right, isn't one that has as much cachet anymore. It used to be like, oh, I'm just producing, 10 pieces or just 20 pieces. Is that scalable, right? Do you have the ownership on your supply chain to really produce limited edition products in a way that is scalable? When I say scalable, I mean looking at your time for production, like production, design. You have to create the whole thing, your supply chain. Are you spending more money because you're buying less units? I think it is, really valuable and really important, I would say, to think about your philosophies around, markdowns and new product, and then also analyzing your P&L. A lot to do if you're a small business, but very, very important because it'll help you with some strategic planning. So, all right, guys, that's kind of all for me on the notion of markdown and sales. Not the most interesting topic when it comes to the world of fashion and retail, but certainly one that is very, very important, and one that actually requires us to take a look at, I would say, the sexier side of retail, which is profitability, making money, protecting your bottom line, and continuing to sell more goods to customers. Today, we covered things like segmentation, regional segmentation, looking at how your business is producing and doing business overseas, right? Looking at how your e-com business can be better analyzed. We talked about your profit and loss statement. A lot of stuff that gets interwoven into one very simple phrase of markdowns and sales. So, needless to say, everything in a retail environment is a working orchestra. You as the business owner are the conductor. You may also happen to be playing the clarinet, the violin, the oboe, and the drums. Sometimes all at once, preferably not. But it can sometimes feel like that. So as the conductor of the orchestra, it's very important you staff your business with a lot of talented and qualified musicians so you can play the most beautiful music you've ever played. If you don't do that, right, you might run the risk of having an orchestra that doesn't really sound like one, and maybe it sounds more like a solo violin appearance, and that can be okay as well. But guys, keep perspective as you're building and growing your business. How big do you want to be? What are the things that are most important to you, and how do you maintain a sustainable and steady growth? You guys can find me at Makers Row. I'm going to try to point to this, Makers Row. And you can also find me at Embark Live, Makers Row at Scaling Retail. And I happen to have a cool promo code as well with me. All right, guys, I will talk to you later. Please be well, be mindful of your businesses and of each other, and continue to support each other. I will rally and cheer you guys on from behind the computer. All right, talk to you soon. Bye.